Okay, so we're just going to do a couple more, similar to what we did yesterday, where we're going to make our list of P's and Q's and then use that list to try to help us find some of these zeros. So we're going to do this one together. It says 2x to the third minus 13x squared plus 13x plus 10. So can you guys tell me what's going to be my P and what's going to be my Q? Okay, P is 10, Q is going to be 2. So if I make my list of factors, what are some numbers I can go into 10? And okay, how about factors for 2? All right, so what I would do then to list out your factors is put all of those over a 1 and then put all of those numbers on the top over the 2. So 1 over 1 is going to be 1. 2 over 1 is 2, and then you have 5, and then you have 10, because that's not going to change those numbers. Now I'm going to put them all over a 2. So 1 over 2 is going to be a half. What happens when I put 2 over 2? You get a 1, which I already have listed. Okay, so you don't need to rewrite something if it was already in your list. You don't need to double that. Okay, so next one would be 5 over 2. What's 10 over 2 become? 5, and that one also is already in my list, so I don't need to add it a second time. So this is my list of possible rational roots here. So let's go ahead and start with a 1 and see if it works. What are my coefficients from this equation? Good. Okay, bring down that first number. Multiply, so you get 2 underneath the negative 13. So you add, you get negative 11. Times 1 is negative 11. Plus positive 13 is 2. Times 1 is 2. 10 plus 2 is going to be 12. So was that a factor? No, because I didn't get a 0 for my remainder. So 1 does not work. So let's try a 2 instead. I'm using the same coefficients, 2, negative 13, 13, and 10. We're going to do the same process here. So drop down that first 2, and then you multiply. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus negative 13 is going to leave me with what? Negative 9 times 2 is negative 18. Plus 13 is going to be what? Okay, and then times 2, I get negative 10. So that gives me a 0. So what does that mean about 2? That's one of my zeros. Okay, so now what I want to do is find the other ones. So I first need to write this 2, this negative 9, this negative 5 as a new polynomial. Those are my new coefficients. So I start one less than my problem up here. My problem up here said x to the third. So I have to start x squared. So 2x squared minus 9x minus 5 equals 0. Now at this point, it's up to you. If you want to try to factor this, you can. If you want to just go straight to the quadratic formula, you can do that too if you don't like factoring, or if you don't like factoring these ones because instead of it just being x squared, where it splits nicely, we'd have to do our longer factoring. So for this one, because you have to do the longer factoring, it's really probably about the same amount of work as using the quadratic formula would be. So I'm going to go ahead and just plug this into the quadratic. So for that, your A is 2, your B is negative 9, your C is negative 5, just when you're pulling those numbers. So quadratic says opposite of B, so opposite of negative 9 would be positive 9. Plus or minus. Underneath the square root, B squared would be negative 9 squared minus 4AC. So 4 times 2 times negative 5. This is all over 2A, 2 times 2. What's going to be negative 9 squared? $81. How about negative 4 times 2 times negative 5? What would be negative 4 times 2? Times negative 5? 40. So we're going to have 81 plus 40 underneath that square root. This is all over a 4. So 81 plus 40 is going to be 121. Is that a perfect square number? Yeah, what's the square root of 121? 11. So we're going to have 9 plus or minus 11 over 4. Remember, you have to do both of them. You have to take 9 plus 11 and divide by 4, and then 9 minus 11 and divide by 4. So 9 plus 11 is 20, and you divide that by 4, so you're going to get 5. So there's another 0. 9 minus 11 is going to be negative 2 over 4. How would that reduce? Good. So there's the other 0. Okay, so I'm just going to list out my zeros that I found at the bottom here. So negative 1/2, a 2, and a 5. And just a reminder, when you guys look at your equation back up here, the thing I have highlighted in yellow at the top, that x to the 3, that 3 tells you how many zeros you should be able to find. So I found all 3 of them because I have 3 answers written down here for my zeros. Okay, so if you're working with a problem and it said x to the 4th or x to the 5th, that 4 and that 5 tell you that you should have 4 zeros or 5 zeros, or it could be 6 or whatever. Most of the time you're going to be dealing with 3. There was one, like yesterday on that worksheet that you guys did for homework, there was one that had 4. So they do happen. And this last one that we're going to do is to the 4th power. So that means that there should be 4 zeros that we can find here. To get you guys started on this one, look at that equation. 2x to the 4th plus 5x to the 3rd plus 4x squared plus x. Do they share anything at all? All the terms. They share what? X. Take an x out of everything. If I take an x out of everything, what is it going to say? Plus 1. Okay? And remember, this is really being like set equal to 0. So one of my zeros is going to be right here. X equals 0. There's one of them. Now what we want to do is finish this up by focusing on that piece that's remaining, that 2x to the 3rd plus 5x squared plus 4x plus 1. Okay, why don't you guys start? We'll kind of just break this apart. You guys start by making your list of your p's and your q's and your factors. So what number is your P? And your Q is 2. What are the factors of 1? Just 1. How about 2? 1 and 2. Okay, so when I write out my final list here, 1 over 1 is 1, and 1 over 2 is 1/2. This is a pretty small list, okay? So I'm looking for 3 more zeros, because I already found one of them. X equals 0 is one of them, because I need 4 total. So 1, -1, 1/2, -1/2, some of those could work. What we need to do is just try to find one to work here. So I would just start testing, like 1, or -1/2, or -1/2. Just pick one and see if it works. So let's go ahead and start with just a 1. Grab your coefficients, not from the original equation, but from the one that we had inside the parentheses after we factored. So what are your coefficients of that one? What number's in front of the x to the third term? So 2, 5, 4, and 1. Does 1 work? No. 1 doesn't work. Let's try -1. Okay, so you guys go ahead and do that for -1 and see if it works. Did it work for you guys? So I got a 0 up here. So that means -1 is one of my factors. Okay, so I have found 2 so far. There's 2 more out there somewhere. So what I'm going to do is write this as a new polynomial. So I start 1 less than x to the third, so it's going to say 2x squared. And then plus 3x plus 1. Do you guys want to try to factor this one, or would you rather just use quadratic formula? What would you guys rather do? They're both about the same amount of work for this problem. Quadratic? So can you guys tell me then what's my A, my B, and my C for this problem? Good. Okay, so let's plug this into our formula. So opposite of B would be -3, plus or minus. Underneath the square root, B squared is 3 squared, minus 4 times AC, so times 2 times 1. All over 2 times A, 2 times a 2. So underneath the square root, what is 3 squared? 9. -4 times 2 times 1? And over 4. So underneath my square root, I'm going to have a 1, because 9 minus 8 is 1. And the square root of 1 is just 1. So this is going to become -3 plus or minus 1 over 4. So again, we have to do this twice. -3 plus 1 divided by 4, -3 minus 1 over 4. So what's negative 3 plus 1? Negative 2, so we have negative 2 over a 4. How's that going to reduce? So there's another 0. What's negative 3 minus 1? Divided by 4? Okay, so let's take a look at our zeros that we have found. So coming back up here, the very first one we found was a 0. Then we found negative 1. And then we had negative a half and negative 1 again. Which one is repeated there? Negative 1. So what do I need to write next to negative 1? Remember? Good, that multiplicity comes up again because it showed up twice. So we would say negative 1, and then right next to it in parentheses, I would say multiplicity of 2 because it showed up twice. Then I'm going to do the negative 1/2, and then I'm going to do my 0.